All right, welcome folks. Interesting. I went to create all the pieces that we had from last week, which I'm sure were working. So let me just go over to CloudFormation and show you. Right, there's our IAM. So remember we created a role. There's our network. There's the security group. And look what happened here. Cluster EKS fails. And when I went and looked at the details, I'm getting a message here that's talking about the logging, cluster logging enabled types not working. And I don't quite understand what this means. Only one subschema matches out of two. Okay. And then it says failed validation constraint for keyword enum. Don't know. I'm pretty sure this worked when we did this last week. Hey, Kevin. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. So yeah, I was getting this set up, and this is what we ran into. So I figured before the stream, I went through. Oh, I overwrote it. I went through and manually created this cluster, and the idea was that it looks like it's all set up now. I thought we could run like a CLI command or something against this to try to figure out what I've done wrong here. Because I think there's got to this I thought looked odd in the first place, but again, I thought last week it worked, so I don't get it. So that's what I did. I built this out manually, just did it through the console. I added the add-ons here, so we've got Core DNS, Kube Proxy, VPC, networking. I just added these because they were there by default. It doesn't even look like they're done yet, but I think we probably have enough here now to run a CLI command against. So let's see if we can figure this out. I'm thinking there's probably like a describe cluster command or something like that we can use. Yeah, so this is what I'm after here. And I'm thinking if we put this in, it may give us the info we want, because it'll give us this type of output. And what I'm looking for is like the structure that is in the configuration. So let's try this. I'm gonna make this a little bigger for now. We'll open up our terminal and we'll say AWS EKS describe cluster, and then it wants the cluster name, which was just Brett test. And in this case, we're running in our demo account, so I'll have to pass it some credentials, which I don't think this will work. Well, that's not why I didn't think it would work. Maybe it's not cluster name, maybe it's just name. Oh yeah, it's just name. Let me check what region we're running in. We're running in Canada. So I'm going to put the region in here because also I'm not sure in my setup here if I've got a region set. And if I do have a region set, it might actually be set for US East 1. So we'll do this instead. All right, and let me grab my credential. Just give me a second. All right, this is what we're after. So that works. Now I'm going to change the output of this. So we'll add -- output YAML. And this way it'll look just like what we're after. So see this right here? Logging, cluster logging, enabled true types. I don't remember seeing that structure in the CloudFormation documentation. That's completely different than what we had, and it looks more logical. Of course, this times out just as we get started. Just give me 1 sec to make sure we're in the right account now that it's timed out. Bear with me 1 minute. I was doing some training today, and I've had one of those days today. I could have sworn that when it timed me out and I went back in, it had dumped me in the wrong account, which was interesting during a training session and you're trying to do a demo and suddenly everything you have is not there anymore. Okay, so see this structure right here? This is I think quite different than what we have. So let's have a look. Yeah, is it me? I hope it's probably me. So here's logging, right? So that looks the same, logging, cluster logging. So if we go in here, cluster logging, see we don't, okay, we do have that. And then there's the cluster logging section, enabled types. See that? It's different. And then we go here and its type is string. The name of the log type. Right, so the type is cluster logging. If we go here, the type is list of logging type config. It's a list. What the heck? Yeah, it's definitely different. And the strange thing is, like, this makes way more sense to me. Like the way it's structured, right? We've got type enabled, then types, and we've got a list. I wonder if we just try it like this. What's the worst that could happen, right? We say types, and then instead of having type 100 times here, which never felt right at the time. I think I even made a comment last week that I'm like, this seems strange. Let's do this. Okay. And the other thing you'll notice here, I was doing a little bit of reading on this. So here's our resource VPC config. And if we go and look back here in the main setting, that was under, I think we have it under, is it under network config? I think it's here. Yeah, this isn't it either. So remember that we talked about, is it accessible? Is the cluster accessible from a public IP? Is it accessible private IP wise? A combination of both, right? And then where can we access it from? I remember seeing this in the config somewhere too last week. It's like, it's very strange how I can't remember what we did. Oh, geez. See what's happening here? Right here. Wow. This is what we're after. And what I want to do is mimic this right here, because what I did in my test setup is I said, I want this to be available publicly, but I also want it to be available privately. So any workers within the cluster can communicate without leaving the AWS network, right? To private communication there. So I think this is probably a better way to set it up. So I'm going to change that as well. And that's under this section. Let's rearrange the screen here so it's a little easier to use. Okay, so we want endpoint private access. We want to set that to true. And then we want to say endpoint public access is also true. And then public access CIDRs. We're gonna pass this in as a parameter. Okay, so we'll just say public CIDR. So I think I got that. Then we got security groups, got subnets already. That's fine. Yeah, you're right. What's the worst that can happen, right? A typo, which is very rare around here. Almost never happens. Let's go back over here and we're gonna now add in, man, I already forget what I called it. Let's try that again. Oh, public CIDR, which we have to add a parameter up here, don't we? Did I say ciders or cider? Cider. Okay. And now what I'm thinking here is we could put whatever we want in here. I think for now, I'll just pass like you can come from anywhere. But we would normally want to lock this down. And then we'll add that. All right. So that's that piece. And then we made these other changes here, which looks way nicer. Don't know if it's going to work. Do I have the tab right there? Let me see. What did they do? Dash enabled tab, which we're gonna leave that off. I don't know why, but again, it just doesn't feel right to me, but I predict in our near future typos. I wonder if we're overthinking this. Since this says enabled types, why don't we just, before we go too far, why don't we just do this? Right? These are the log types that we want enabled. Right? Again, what's the worst that can happen? So let's try this. I made a few changes. Oh, you'll also notice cluster YAML became EKS YAML, which probably means this is all wrong. Yeah, okay, so we got to change that. Remember last week the template was all orange lined? I don't know what that was, so I simply just copied it into a new file and that was it. Okay. Yeah, it didn't like your message, Kevin. Yeah, it thinks you're using sex-based terms. Babe Ruth, I guess, is suspect. Okay, so we want to, I like this being EKS cluster, so that means we actually have to change this name back. So we'll say EKS refactor cluster. Look at that. Yeah. So we're going to go back just because for whatever reason that's driving me nuts. No idea why that's happening just based on the name. And we will go here and we'll just make it EKS EKS, which seems weird, but okay. Lots of changes. So from the CI, we updated stack name for EKS, and then we let's see what this does. Okay, well, it validated, so no syntax errors, which is better than I thought we were going to get. It's still going to fail when it gets here because this is sitting here failed. Maybe it'll delete faster than the pipeline is. We're in a race now to see what goes first. Okay, there, that's gone. All right. Because what would happen there is it would throw an error when it tried to do the deploy, and it would say something like, I don't know, cluster or stack can't be deployed because it's in a rollback complete state or something like that. Oh, there we go. It wouldn't have mattered then, right? Oh, look at that. that's, hey, look, I predicted. Rollback complete state. Okay, I thought I deleted it. I did delete it. I'm having one of those days today. You know, things just seem a little squirrely. Let's try it again. Okay, there we go. So we should now have a stack here. We can go and we can look at the change set. It's going to add our cluster. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't like the formatting of that little logging section, I would suspect it'll fail pretty quickly. Yeah, there you go. So it still doesn't like that. Okay, so this seems a little better now. Logging, cluster logging, enable types 0, expected JSON object found string. Oh, see this, it did it down here too. So it didn't like all the enabled types that we set up, but it also didn't like in the resources VPC config public access CIDRs expected type JSON array, it found a string. So I think that this usually means it wants to be like that, but we'll check the documentation. Let's go back over here. Yeah, see this? So dash string. Okay, that's fine. But it didn't like these. Let's actually do a couple commits here just so we can keep this straight. Fixed, changed. Okay. And then this one is still messing with us. Do they have an example? Oh yeah, but look, this is what we copied from last week. So yeah. All right. Enabled types type. All right, let's see what this does this time. Just now. Oh wow. That deployed very quickly. Okay, review in progress. There we go. Try it again. I don't even remember. I don't even remember that example. Looking at the example last week, so yeah, still doesn't like it. Enable types for type number. Only one subschema matches out of 2. Does it not like what we call it? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, let's just try something. Let's go like this. Maybe it doesn't like the name that we gave one of these. Although, you know, my strategy of figuring it out from here, these look all the same, right? API, audit, authenticator, controller, manager, and scheduler. Is the dreaded typo the reason? probably what it is. It always makes me smile when you have a typo when you type typo. Let's see. It's taking its time deleting it, even though it's... Oh. It's probably gave me that same error, the rollback thing. Yeah, delete in progress. Not quite sure why this is taking so long. If it... Oh, I guess it's rolling it back, so maybe it's got part of the cluster. I don't know. Okay, there we go. So we can go back over here and just rerun that stage. At least it fails quickly. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like this way we're able to spread the work over multiple, well, if we did an EC2 based implementation, multiple EC2 instances, the Fargate piece, I'm interested to kind of see how that works so that we can set up, I think they're called Fargate profiles, and then we don't have to manage anything underneath. Hey, look at that. So that looks like it solved it. Type schedule versus scheduler. Let's see if it fails from anything else. That's a good sign though. I guess last week, maybe what we did was, no, but it failed almost immediately. I'm confused still. Yeah. Although I don't remember what I ate for lunch, so I don't know how I could think that I could remember what we did last week. Okay, that's a good sign. So if we go and open up the EKS console, we should see our second cluster coming to life. Yeah, there we go. So this is our demo one that I created. And then here's the new one coming to life. We should figure out secrets encryption, get a KMS ID enabled on it, those types of things. But I figure if we could get the cluster going at least, that would be good. No add-ons, so unlike the one that I did through the console, those aren't there. Okay, there we go. Right, all of our, I guess I could have gone in here and seen how it was spelt. That would have helped. There are our tags. Okay, that's great. All right, so while we're waiting for this, because it takes a little bit of time to come to life, why don't we have a look here? So that's our cluster. Let's have a look at the add-ons. So these are add-ons to help automate the provisioning and lifecycle management of common operational software for clusters. Add-ons require running 1.18. We're running 1.21, okay, which is the default, although there is now 1.22. Because EKS clusters rely on the server-side apply Kubernetes feature, which is available only in 1.18 and later. For more information, so let's go over and have a look at the add-ons. So here are the different add-ons. Let's have a look at what we got. EKS supports native VPC networking with the Amazon VPC Container Network Interface plugin for Kubernetes. To me, that seems like a no-brainer. I think we should add that one. And what we'll do is we'll borrow again from the configuration of that test cluster and we'll use that output to see if we can figure it out. I think that makes more sense, or the most sense. So let's do this one. Okay, they're showing you here how to add it on with the CLI. We will do that in code. So there's that. What's core DNS? Flexible, extensible DNS server that serves as the Kubernetes cluster DNS. When you launch an EKS cluster with at least one node, 2 replicas of core DNS images are deployed by default, regardless of the number of the nodes. Again, that probably makes a lot of sense, right? Oh, here we go. The core DNS pods can be deployed for Fargate nodes if your cluster includes an AWS Fargate profile with a namespace that matches the namespace for core DNS deployment. For more information about core DNS in the Kubernetes doc. Again, it makes sense, you know, not knowing a whole lot about how all this works. DNS for the cluster seems like a no-brainer. So I think we should add that. We can read about it later and figure out the details. kubeproxy. This maintains network rules for each EC2 node. It enables network communication to your pods. kubeproxy is not deployed to Fargate nodes. So we're going down the Fargate path. When I read that, I would say that we don't need that. For more information, see the Kubernetes documentation. Okay, so I think we don't need kubeproxy. What the heck is this? AWS distro for open I can't say that word. Telemetry. There we go. A little Elmer, is it Elmer Fudd moment there? Enables simplified experience for instrumenting your. I can't talk anymore. It's been a long day. Too much teaching. For instrumenting, there you go. Your application's running to send metric data, like Amazon CloudWatch, Prometheus. That seems like it makes sense. Again, right? It looks like it needs some prereqs like a role and stuff. So that one we might come back to. And then EBS, improve security and reduce the amount of work. You can manage EBS CSI drivers as an add-on. If you added, you can manage following. Again, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Why not have these plugins or add-ons to make the management of these services easier? So let's go through them one by one. I think we've got 3 of 4 that make sense. VPC, Core DNS, or sorry, 3 of 5. VPC, Core DNS, ADOT, and EBS. So let's start with the VPC one. Are there any prereqs for this that we need? I don't see anything in the documentation. We're doing the ever popular, let's just scroll through the page. And if nothing jumps out at us, we're just going to try it. What's the worst that can happen? It's the whole point of these sessions, right? So I'm going to look in here again. I thought I saw add-on configs in here somewhere. Let's do that again. Cluster, created endpoint. Isn't that funny? Huh. Okay, well. Let's have another quick look at this. Could have sworn I saw that in the output somewhere. When I first ran this, I ran it as JSON. Wanted to see if we saw it here. Kubernetes. Yeah, I guess I didn't. I guess I just kind of thought that I saw it. All right, so let's see if we can figure this out. Oh, see this? It's not part of the cluster. It's an add-on. So in this case, the name, the version, and then we refer back to the cluster name where we want to add this. Okay. So let's do VPC add-on. right? Let's make a little note of what we're going to do here. So we'll call these EKS add-ons. And we're going to do VPC core DNS ADOT and EBS, I think is what I said. All right. So the type is AWS EKS add-on. Yeah, that's not the same for all that. No, I think we have to refer to each add-on separately, I think. And I'm going to put a depends on attribute here and say this depends on the EKS cluster. And then we'll say properties add-on name. I'm just going to put a bunch of to-dos here, and we'll have to go back and look at these. The add-on version. Cluster name. This will be some type of reference, but we'll look at the how it does it want a resource name? Does it want a resource ID? So we'll have a look at that. Resolve conflicts. What is that? How to resolve parameter value conflicts when migrating an existing add-on to an Amazon EKS add-on. Not required in this case. Service account role ARN. The ARN of existing IAM role to bind to the add-on's service account. The role must be assigned the IAM permissions required by the add-on. If you don't specify an existing role, then the add-on uses permissions assigned to the node IAM role. For more information. It's not required, and I want to see what will happen if we do the first one, because the only place I saw where it said prereqs an IAM role was that ADOT, the telemetry. I still can't say that word. That plugin or add-on, I didn't see requirements for the other ones, so we'll leave that off. And then any tags, and again, it probably doesn't really require too many tag that. We're going to do the best practice of tagging. So we're going to do this, and then what we'll do is we'll say we'll call these VPC add-on. Okay. So now we need these other pieces. First, let's figure out what it wants for the name. So it just wants the name of the cluster. If we go back to the cluster page and we just look at the return values, if we do a ref, it returns the resource name. So we could just go in here and say ref EKS cluster. That's easy. Now the tricky part is, how do we find the names and the versions? I wonder if that's in the documentation. Recommended versions for each cluster version. We're running 1.2.1, which is funny because it's marked as the default, but as soon as you stand the cluster up, it says there's an update. I think what we should do is we should just make this 1.2.2. At least to get rid of, let's have a quick look. AWS EKS 1.2.2. Okay, so this was just announced on April 4th. Oh, this is actually saying that EKS, okay, yeah, I think I'm reading this correctly. Includes external credential providers, server-side apply, bound service account token volumes, warning mechanisms. You can find details in the EKS blog post. I think it probably makes sense to use the current version, right? Pod security, labeling, a bunch of new features. I think it makes sense to do that. Plus, now's the time to kind of fiddle around with it and see what happens. So let's make a change here. I've got the default value. We set the default value for the parameter to the default value that showed in the console. So what we can do here is we can actually override this now as a parameter. This will probably cause that cluster to be recreated, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's not like there's anything running on it. Okay, so we're going to pass 122 in instead. So we'll run the latest version. And then that goes back to here, and it says if we're running 122, you want to run this. And I know we could probably pass these in as parameters, but if Amazon has this kind of one-to-one relationship, we could make a map for this if we wanted to. You know what? That might be kind of a good thing to do. So let's make a mapping here just to kind of show how this works. So maps allow us to essentially create key value pairs. So what we could do is we could create a new mapping, and we'll call this VPC add-on map. Right? So that's the logical name of the map. And then we have to have our pairs here. So a key. So in this case, we'll make our keys the versions of the cluster. So what I'm thinking is we do something like this. We go 1, 2, 2. Right. And then we can go, we got to give this a name. So we'll just call it at least that way later we can go back and we know what the heck these are referring to. And then we could just go, right? It gives us a little more flexibility in the template. And then say 1, 2, 1. What I want to do is I want to cover off all these versions. So we'll do these 4 versions. I'll come back and add these in a minute. Just do all the cutting and pasting one. What to do, 119? So that's 1, 2, 1. That's 1, 2, 0. And then 119. Okay. And then what you do down here is we can use, it's an intrinsic function called find and map. I wonder if there's a reference. Yeah, here you go. Right, so we'll use the short form for this. So we're going to go find in map. The first is our map name, which I already forget what we called it. This. Oops, what happened there? Nothing. Okay. That's our map name. And then we need our top level key. So our top level key is this. So we're going to refer to our EKS version. And if I'm remembering this command properly, it's going to go here. It's going to look this up. And then I think we just have to provide this. So we'll do that. Okay. Let's see what happens there. Do they give us an example? What would we do without examples? So see this? Region maps are our map name. This is our first level key. This is our second level key. So we've got an example here, region map. They're looking up the region and then they're getting the second level. They're saying use the HVM AMI. So right there, I think we got that. So that'd be a pretty neat way to do it, because then if you gave this to somebody and they said for whatever reason they want to run 119, they have the add-on for that with the particular version. Now the thing that we have to figure out is what is the name? Maybe they've got an example down here, right there. Add-on name. Okay. You'd almost think we knew what we were doing. I spoke too soon, didn't I? Okay. What did we do here? In the CI, we added a parameter for EKS version and set it to 1 through 2. And then we added a VPC, what's it called? VPC-CNI add-on. Let's see what happens. I would think, yeah, just like we planned. You got it, Kevin. Exactly. I would think what's going to happen here is because we're changing the version, it's going to nuke our cluster and start again. But let's see what it says here. So if we go here and we look at version. Oh, look at that. Update requires no interruption. We might not be able to deploy this yet, though, depending on CloudFormation. Okay, so this is done. Our cluster has been created. So we've got the 2 clusters running. Okay, so let's do this and see what happens. If I was a betting man, I'd say there's at least 1 typo, probably more. Pull this over here. Kevin, I know you're a baseball fan, but are you a hockey fan? Are you watching the Penguins tonight? I guess they've been playing for a bit, haven't they? One nothing for the Rangers. How much time left? A minute left in the first. They're almost through the first. Okay, that ran. Let's go over here. Could you hear the excitement in my voice? So we're going to modify the cluster, changing the version. No replacement required there. And then we're going to see if this VPC add-on wizardry works. Let's see what happens. Doesn't mean that there aren't spelling mistakes. It just means that we didn't make any horrible ones that at least got through the validation process. Actually, let's see what's happening here over on the cluster side. Oh, there we go. So look what it's done. It just says updating the cluster. I bet you that would be much more difficult to handle if you had pods there. You might have to move some pods around or something. I'm going to have to read the documentation on how that works. You know what? The other thing we should look at here. The Jays are playing the big bad Yankees tonight. 0-0 in this end of the second. Where are your Pirates? Pirates playing today? Oh, Pirates got an off day. Yeah, it looks like an off day. Jays lost a tough one last night. I think the Yankees scored in the top of the 8th or the top of the 9th. Got a run. Pretty good. I was flipping. It was a good sports night last night. I was flipping between the Leaf game and the Jay game. I would suspect this is going to take a little while again, based on sort of how long it took to do this, the actual cluster deploy in the first place. So maybe what we'll do is while we're waiting, you know, how bad could this be, right? So that's our VPC. Let's have a look at the EBS one next. All right, so prerequisites: an existing cluster, an existing AWS Identity and Access Management OpenID connector provider for your cluster. And it also needs an IAM role. So let's leave that one and look at DNS and see if there are any requirements for this one. Here's our map again that will do the same thing. Adding it. I don't see any prereqs here. So let's do this one next then, because we'll have to read some of the documentation around the OIDC connector and the roles and stuff like that. Oh, Pirates game postponed, eh? Okay, so let's do this. We'll call this DNS add-on. And we're going to do, I don't know if we're really saving ourselves a lot of keystrokes here, but we'll do it this way. Depends on, I would wager this is probably core DNS, and we need to create this map again. So let's go up here and we'll say DNS add-on map. And then what did we do? Okay, version. And we'll call this DNS add-on version. And we'll do the same thing. We'll just put a bunch of placeholders. Oops. Oh, keyboard map is suddenly forgotten in my head. There we go. Right. Okay, that's still updating. So this is probably still in update in progress. All right. And then what we need to do is we need to change this to DNS add-on and our add-on version, like that. Now this we need to verify. And if it's anything like the other one, okay, look at that. We got lucky. Core DNS. Oh, excuse me. It does not feel like spring here, but my sinuses are telling me it's spring. I'm starting to feel a little bit of allergies coming on. All right, so that's that one. And then I'm pretty sure the other two pieces we wanted to add both had requirements. Let's know this one here. So why don't we start with, why don't we have it look at ADOT? Here are our prereqs. Before installing, you must meet the following requirements. You need to grant permissions to Amazon EKS add-ons to install it. Okay, so this might be something we can't do in code because this is a kubectl command. So this is pushing something in. We'd have to look at that maybe. And then you have to have a cluster that's running 119 or higher. So that's fine. This might take, this looks like there's some additional hurdles to get over on that one. So maybe we'll leave that one for now. We'll put it on our to-do list. What is here? Here's this OIDC provider again. So let's have a look. Your cluster has an OpenID connector issue URL associated to it. To use IAM roles for service accounts, an IAM OIDC provider must exist. You have to have an existing cluster. We got that covered. If you don't have one, you can create one. And then you have to create an ODBC provider using EKS CTL or the Amazon Management Console. I wonder if... Okay, so that's updated. I saw this in the configuration here of the cluster. See this right here? So that was created for me when I created it through the management console. It'll be interesting to see if it created it for this cluster since we did this programmatically. It did. Okay. Now I wonder if there is output for that. Right here. Okay. So if we ever need to refer to the OpenID connect URL, we can simply use a, what is this? A get attribute dot OpenID connect issue URL, and that will provide us with that. Okay, so we've got this already. You know the other thing I'm going to do? I'm going to delete. Am I jumping the gun on deleting this? You know what? Let's leave that for now, and then let's go over here and see what happened to this. Oh, look. Add-on version specified is not supported. So to me, that means we did something wrong in our map in this chunk right here, right? Add-on version specified is not supported. So we need to check this just to make sure we didn't get a typo or something. That looks okay. Oh, wait. The version of the add-on was deployed when you create a cluster, maybe earlier. If you update your... It doesn't include... Well, that would mean that these are essentially all the same builds. I wonder if it's just this. Let's try it. It feels kind of redundant now at this point since these versions are all the same. I want to see if it works with the map because I think that would just be an interesting way to give us some additional flexibility if it ever changed later on, right? Okay, so let's do this. Fix. Yeah, I think it would be neat as a way just to make it a little more flexible. Let's see what happens. I wonder if it'll roll these changes back. See this? Delete. Okay, I don't think it would have rolled back the version. Okay, it stayed at 122. Did our update. That's fine. Give this a second. Ah. Template. Oh, you know what? I cut and pasted that whole section, so it's probably tab issue somewhere. So it says 115. Yeah, see this? We're all in one space. Or one tab, I guess. Validation worked. Okay, everything's updated. So again, we've got modify cluster. That's interesting. Wonder what it's modifying there. Because it still says it's 122. Let's have a look here if we can see anything obvious. So there's our DNS add-on, EKS cluster. Yeah, it's weird. It's saying that it wants to do a version update. Well, let's see what it does. Okay, there's our update complete. So it's basically just saying, yeah, you're supposed to update. Oh, I'm already updated. Ah. Return add-on version specified is not supported. This is still in the VPC add-on. So I tell you what we're going to do is we're going to try to rule out the error up here by taking our VPC add-on, and we're just going to put it right in here instead of find in map, just to see if we get the same error, then we know we're just misreading the documentation, right? Otherwise, if it works, we know it's something in that find in map call that we made. There's our rollback complete. Okay, that's going, and while that's going, let's have a look at this. Recommended versions. Let's look at how they did it down here. See, no, they've got the full add-on version. It does mention a service account role though. See this? Did I miss something? Oh, look, prereqs. Okay, we've got that. We've got the existing OIDC. That's fine. An IAM role. Yeah, another an RTFM moment, right? So we need an IAM role with this policy associated to it. Let's have a look at this. So this is a pretty basic setup. We're creating a service account. IAM service account. Let's have a look over here how they've got it set up. So there's a described cluster. They're getting that's that OIDC URL, right, which we saw in the console. Okay, so we should have that, no problem. Copy the contents of the name, blah, 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 replace this, blah, 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 and then create a role. Attach the policy to the role, run this command. Attach role policy, and it's oh, okay, so this is just, I think we can kind of put this all in. IAM attach role policy. Oh, I see how this is going to be a bit of a challenge, I think. See this section right here? This is the ARN that we would have to construct. From the OIDC. So originally I was thinking we could, they have a V at the beginning of the version. Oh, do they? Thanks, John. I didn't even see that. Yeah. What's up here? See, it's not here. So I'm gonna take that I took it from here. But yeah, that's a good eye. Thanks for catching that. So I don't think this would still work because if we read the full requirements, it does need this role. Now, what we could do here, this is the trust policy, right? So what they're saying here is copy the file, copy the contents, and create a file called trust policy, blah, 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 right? .json, and then replace some components. So this is the trust policy that we create, assume role policy document. So we're creating a role with this name, and then we're associating the file with, or sorry, the assume role document with this. And then you need to attach the IAM policy. And it looks like the policy that you use is dependent on the version, IP version, and we're using version 4. So that's what we're going to do here. The tricky part with this is because we've got in here some, like this we can get programmatically, that we can get programmatically, but this is the OIDC identifier, which wouldn't exist until the cluster exists. The reason I'm getting hung up on this is because if you remember, we created an IAM stack, right? And we created a cluster role here. So in my mind, I was like, well, we would go back and just add another role in here for the VPC CNI. But I normally deploy the IAM resources first. Right? Because originally what I would like to do is create the role here, export the role ARN, and then if we see the example, wherever it was back here, right, we can just then add the ARN for that role. But we might have to put the role definition for that component in here, because the cluster needs to exist before we can do this little chunk right, where was it? Here, right, to get this information. I like to usually keep the IAM stuff separate, but I don't think we're going to be able to in this case. I like to see how we've got these kind of security resources. So our any identity policies, things like that we're going to basically entities within IAM. If we have to create groups or roles or maybe even users, which I wouldn't want to do, but in theory, we jam all these in here, and then we have all of our security groups here, and that way we've got things separated. And it seems weird to create two IAM profiles. Like you run this IAM at the beginning because you need this role to actually create the cluster, because we refer to it right here, right? And then we're going to have another IAM template to create the IAM roles that are required by some of the add-ons, but they also require the existence of a cluster because we need that OIDC connector URL info. Yeah. I'm sure there's probably a cleaner way to do this, but what we'll do is we've got this EKS add-on section. So what we'll do here is let's make another note, right? EKS add-ons. Let's do like this. Certain right? Not perfect, but it is what it is. So let's see if we can construct this. So we'll do VPC add-on IAM role. Oh yeah, no, John, I totally get it. I'm getting more hung up on where it makes more sense, like to try to keep the security related stuff out of the templates that don't have direct security. But I totally get what you mean. Yeah, it makes complete sense. But I think this will do. I think this will do. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new AWS IAM. And this depends on, because we need the OIDC information, it depends on the EKS cluster, right? So we want that cluster to be there first, okay? And then we'll say, the other thing that we have to remember as soon as we do this in our CI scripts, I'm gonna add it right now, we need to add in here, -- capabilities, okay? And see up here we said capability IAM. If I'm reading this right, it almost looks like it's going to be looking for a specific role name. Oh, hold on. You can replace this with any name. Okay, perfect. So that means that we can just say capability IAM. Okay. Same thing we did up here. If you, I think I talked about this last week, but if you're deploying, if you're in the CloudFormation console, and let's say you have an IAM template, and I'm doing this through a pipeline, but if you were in the console and you just said upload and it had an IAM resource, there's a checkbox that you have to essentially acknowledge that your CloudFormation template, when Amazon deploys the stack, it's going to create IAM resources for you. So you need to do the same thing in your deploy scripts. Essentially, you're checking that box. The other thing is we get away with doing capability IAM because we let CloudFormation dynamically name the resources. And I want to say that it's like this. If you have a template, an IAM template that you are including names in, so you're hard coding the names in, then you need something like capability named IAM or something. It's slightly different. But if we don't need a specific name, then we can do it like that. Okay. All right, so properties here, I'm going to borrow from this. So we need the assume role. Oops. The spacing on that definitely is not right. There we go. And now we're going to create statements based on this. So effect. And I'm just going to do the old placeholder move here. We're going to say action. So we're making a call to the security token service, assume role with web identity, and then we've got some conditions. What am I doing? There we go. Yeah. Okay, so that's our role, our assume role. statement, and then what we should be able to do is combine this all in one. So see how they've got the creating the role, and then they're assigning a policy here. They're not assigning a policy, they're attaching a policy to the role. We can do this right like this. Okay, just go clunk, and then if we go over to the console, and we go to IAM, I don't know what I clicked there. I'm going to go to policies. And this is the policy that it's looking for. Maybe this is the ARN that we need, but I'm just going to double check. Since nothing's in red there, I would assume that's what we're after. But let's just search for it. Yeah, there it is. And yeah, there's the ARN, so we can do that. Okay, so that's gonna tie everything that we need. Now we just need to construct this ARN, and we need just to see what these conditions are doing. Okay. Hey John, this is interesting. The Amazon resource name of an existing IAM role to bind to the add-on service account. The role must be assigned to the IAM permissions required by the add-on. If you don't specify an existing IAM role, then the add-on uses the permissions assigned to the node IAM role. So are we making this more complicated than we need to? Because what I could do is we did create a cluster role. No, that's different than the node role though, right? If there's one thing to be sure here, we are learning a little bit about EKS in general. Let's have a quick look at the roles here. See, so when we looked at the cluster, we had the role ARN. So let's see what they say here. This is the role that provides permissions to the Kubernetes control plane to make calls to the AWS API operations on your behalf. Okay. You know what? Why don't we just try it? Why don't we go, because see what we could do is we could go in here and we could just simply add the ARN here, and that would provide the EKS cluster with the access it needs to other services, and then we could add the additional VPC CNI policy here. And if I don't know if it makes sense to do, it would definitely be easier, and we would still be practicing least privilege because we are using the particular. Well, you know what? Nah, I'm waffling on how to do this. I think we should try this, because then we've got a dedicated role that's assigned, like you said, John, that's assigned directly to this particular add-on and nothing else, rather than having, even if that cluster role works, then the cluster has access to other things and maybe it doesn't need it. Let's try it like this. Let's see if we can construct these ARNs the way that they're asking us to. If it doesn't work, we can always fall back to the other one just to see if we can get it going tonight. All right, so this is relatively painless to do. We could just do a big sub command here. The challenge would be, how do we get that little chunk? And they say here, copy the contents, replace, and this chunk comes from the output returned in the previous step. And in here, we are, oh, okay, here we're saying describe the cluster and give me the information about the OIDC issuer. So I wonder if we go and look at the return values. This gives us the whole URL, which I would assume is, if we go back over here, oops, wrong region. That's this whole chunk, and I think we just need that. It's a shame they don't have a return value just for that. Hmm. It looks like this endpoint or this unique identifier is jammed in a couple different places. But there's no way just to get that little chunk of code. So you can see here in this example, when they run this command, right, they're running the EKS CLI command, and then they've got a query so that it just returns the OIDC issuer. Oh, I see. Okay, so they are getting the whole URL and then just telling you to take that and put it in here. So this is AWS. This part's easy, so we can lay this stuff out. Right? I wonder if we could do something like that. I don't know if that's a great way to do that or not. John, isn't that the OIDC issue from your cluster properties you showed us earlier? Yeah, it is, but it's just not in a good format, right? Because what we don't need the URL. If I'm reading this right, we just need this. Oh, it's so close. Look, so if we didn't have this, no, it's not exact. No, it's not. My understanding is I need that little piece off the end, right? So the ID, see here? So ID slash something, but I don't have a return value just for that. Is that the same number for the endpoint? Yeah, so that must be some sort of unique identifier that Amazon assigns because it's in a couple spots. Let's just see something here. Add-on, add new. Look, John, you were right. V. I'm going to change that now because I will forget that later on. Won't let me cut and paste. Let's do V. I know I'm getting a lot of changes in here, which is probably going to bite me in the ass later, but live on the edge, right? So, John, I think you're right on that chunk. That makes sense. So what we need is we need a way to figure out how to get that OID piece in here. And see this here? Okay, let's look at this. Inherit from node. Okay, so maybe... So we're going to try... So right now we have only... Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves on this. So let me say this out loud so I can kind of... Maybe it makes sense in my own head. We have a cluster with nothing in it right now, right? There's no nodes, there's no compute, there's nothing, right? No node groups. Now, the plan is to run this with Fargate so we don't have node groups or nodes running. I wonder in the Fargate profile, if we create the Fargate profile, will it have the information that we need that we can use later on for the role? Okay, let that bounce around in our heads a bit. We got to do a quick sports update. 2-1. Go over here. Nothing, nothing. Wow. To think about the Yankees and the Jays, how much hitting they've done. More the Yankees than the Jays, right? And then last night, what was it? 3-2? And then tonight it's nothing, nothing halfway through. It's amazing. Let's have a look at the box score quickly. Can I get here's the box here. Who's pitching? Oh, it's Manoah again. Look at that. 1 hit, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. The Yankees side, 4-3 hit. Wow, yeah, that's amazing. Another pitcher's duel, eh? So, okay, so what I'm thinking is maybe we forego the add-ons right now. And instead we focus on getting the Fargate profile done, because maybe there's something in that Fargate configuration that... Oh, I left something running here. Hang on a second. I can hear audio. All right, that's interesting. So can you you hear MLB highlights playing? I have MLB highlights playing and I don't have the MLB website open. You can't hear it? Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. Slightly annoying as it's playing in the background, but yeah, okay. So yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, we'll do the old mass comment out, and we will get the profile set. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by this crazy MLB in the background here. Hold on. It's so loud in my headphones that I don't even have on my head. Okay, so that's not what it is. Okay, that's really weird. So I basically went, nope. Wow. Okay, sorry folks, you got to bear with me a second here. I won't be able to oh, look, I think it's from Twitter maybe. I have my Twitter screen open in the background here. Maybe that's where it's coming from. All right. Okay, John, let me see what you say here. You think the OIDC is a per account basis? Sorry, the link doesn't work. I am OIDC provider. Yeah. It's interesting though, because like when we created this, it assigned this, but I don't disagree that it is probably OpenID. So are you saying let me have a look at that. Is there a way to pass in an existing OICD? See here, like I don't see any configuration options here. I'll tell you what, let's leave that one on the burner for now. Okay. And then let's look at Fargate and just see. Yeah, this, if you mean this here, this URL was created when we created the cluster itself. I hadn't created the AWS IAM OIDC provider at all. Let's have a quick look at it. So it can be used as a principle in the roles trust policy. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're just using we're trying to use the OIDC provider from the cluster itself. And that establishes a trust relationship between AWS and the OIDC provider. Yeah, I don't know. Return values. So it returns here the ARN. So see, that's actually kind of what we're after, right? Because what we're putting into the VPC add-on, the IAM role, is we're trying to put in right here is an ARN that uniquely identifies that OIDC provider. But see, this is interesting, but I don't see how I use it back here, wherever KMS is gone. Or not KMS, EKS. Right here. So when we're creating the cluster, encryption is just the secrets part. This is our network configuration, which was about the IP ranges we want to provide. Logging, resort. This is all about within the VPC. So I like that idea, John. I'm going to open a ticket tomorrow about it, and we'll see if we can get some info on how to do it. But for now, let's see if we can get the Fargate profile going. So what do we need here? Okay, so let's just do this. We're gonna, oh, I can't shrink all these down now. All right, whatever. So this creates a Fargate profile for your cluster. You must have at least one profile in a cluster to be able to run pods on Fargate. Okay. The profile allows an administrator to declare which pods run on Fargate and specifies which pods run on which Fargate profile. Makes sense. The declaration is done through the profile selector. Each profile can have up to 5 selectors that contain a namespace and labels. Okay. A namespace is required for each selector. The label field consists of multiple optional key value pairs. Pods that match the selectors are scheduled on Fargate. Okay, so if I'm reading that right, we create these Fargate profiles, and then once we have pods that launch, Fargate's going to use the selectors, the information that we're providing in the profiles themselves to determine where to run those pods for us. Okay. When you create a profile, you must specify a pod execution role, okay, to use with the pods that are scheduled with the profile. The role is added to the cluster's Kubernetes role-based access control for authorization, so that kubelet, kubelet, I guess, that is running on Fargate. The pod execution role also provides IAM permissions to the Fargate infrastructure to allow read access to ECR. That makes sense, right? Because it's going to go off and get the images to run the containers. More information, pod execution role. Okay, so we'll have to look at that. Fargate profiles are immutable. However, you can create a new updated profile to replace the existing profile and then delete the original. I don't know if that reminds me of the old launch configurations that you used to use for auto-scaling, right? If any Fargate profiles in the cluster are in the deleting status, you must wait for the Fargate profile to finish deleting before you can apply any other profiles in that cluster. Okay. So I think the first thing we're going to need here is, it looks like we're going to need this pod execution role. So let's find out what this looks like. All right, so this we can build. Like, I'm also, see how they've got a star here? I wonder in that other OIDC ARN, if we tie it down to a particular account, a particular region, like you can see it here, particular account, particular region, ID/star. I'm going to try that later and just see if it creates this role. Okay, but for now, let's do this. And I'm going to go back to the way I prefer to do this. We're going to go over here and we're going to say Fargate pod role. Right, to try to keep all of this stuff in one spot. Okay, so again, we need our assume role. Go. Actually, I know if I need that, so let's try it without the single quotes just to cut it down. And then we'll again do a sub here. Oh, look, it's got a cluster name. Again, you know, like I'm thinking about this. If I'm tied to a single account, so if I change this, I say dollar, sorry, wrong profile again. There it is, dollar AWS. This is our region code, right? Yeah, region. Okay, and then we go right, Fargate profile. Like if it takes that, do we care? Because in that point, it's tied to a particular region, it's tied to a particular account. And if you think about this, you may have multiple clusters with multiple Fargate profiles, right? I don't know if I don't know if it's gonna like star slash star in there or not. I think we're gonna try it and see what happens. All right, Kevin. Yeah. See you later, man. Thanks for hanging out. So that's that. That looks pretty good for this. Okay, so that's that. What policy does it need assigned to it? For role name, use a unique name. Tags, create roles. On the roles page, search for that. Trust relationships, and edit trust relationship. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, this is what I'm after right here. Okay, so we'll say, let's put a description in here. So IAM role used for Fargate file. Okay. So that's our role. And I'm going to run this just to see if it lets me do this. I don't know if it's going to like that or not. So we're going to do this single update here. These are all commented out, so nothing should change there now. Oh, where did I do these to-dos? I think those are just inside. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's see what this does. Either a spelling mistake or it didn't like that star.star. Unresolved dependencies, AWS region. What did I do wrong there? Oh. I think I need this. Brain is starting to get tired at this point. Fix typo in. Wow. Wow, there we go. One more time. Yeah, been a long day. That's a little better. Sounds like there is a huge bird right outside my window, which is very strange because it's 8:30 here and it's pitch black. I don't know what the heck that is. You could always try to sign into Zendesk. Okay. So here's our change set. We should see that new role. Let's see what happens. I don't know. Even if it likes this, even if it lets me do the star.star, I don't know if I feel great about that. And I also don't know if it will actually work when we try to refer to it in the profile. Let's see what it does. You know what I mean by when I say work? Okay, great. I can refer to the role, but is it actually going to give Fargate the access that it needs? Okay, well it likes it. At least it didn't fail. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I gotta do the outputs. So we need Fargate. I'll make it exactly the same so that if I need a role name later, I can grab that. I don't feel like typing all this. Pod, and then we'll do the same thing here. We'll also export the ARN. Okay, so let's do this. All right, see what happens there. John, did it have the VPC add-on access as well in that managed policy, the Fargate role? I didn't see it, but it would make sense maybe that we add it there, because then when you launch pods within that Fargate profile, you're going to have pods for, I would assume it's going to launch a pod for the VPC CNI. If we do the core DNS, if we do the EBS controller as well, right? I think those all run on pods, so therefore they would need the access to those services. So maybe that is the better way to do it. We can just add the policy ARNs right here, right? Yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to make myself a little note here. Actually, I think I have a README. I'll park that for now. What I'd like to do is see if I can get the Fargate profile built, and then if I can get that profile built, that's probably a good time to call it quits for the night. Let's see if we've got this new change set. So the change set will be empty because we're just adding the outputs, so that's fine. That should be okay unless I got a typo there. So that means now, in theory, we should be able to go back here and build this out. So let's just call it Fargate profile. Now I'm going to put a number on the end just because it said we can have multiple profiles. So this way I can just define it a bunch of times. The other thing that we could do, again, it might be making it more complicated than we need to. You know what? I kind of like it actually. what I'm thinking is, instead of including the Fargate profile here, okay, and I'll explain my logic here. Let me just grab what I need here. So we're going to have some sort of parameter section, because what I'm thinking is, if we do this, Fargate profile, and then we have whatever's here. If I have this as a separate template, and we make sure that we have the right outputs coming from the cluster so we can associate the profile with the cluster, then in theory, I can have just this one chunk of code and run it multiple times in my CI script, rather than having Fargate profile 0, Fargate profile 1, Fargate profile 2, which look exactly the same for the most part. So this way, if I break it into this other smaller template, it also becomes a little easier to manage if we end up with large templates. But I think this way I could just run it multiple times in my CI. Let's try it and see what it does. The beauty of doing this when it doesn't matter, right? We can make lots of mistakes. So let's say type AWS EKS Fargate profile. Okay, so here right away, we're going to have to refer to the cluster. So what we'll do is we'll use the old handy input. So we're just going to call it cluster stack. And we'll just put that like that. So that's our reference, but I need to figure out what we're going to pass. Actually, this is easy. So I'm just going to say ref. No, it's not. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's just leave that as to do. All right. And then Fargate profile name. Now this is not the role. This is the name. I'm going to let CloudFormation name this for us. Okay. Because see right here, if we want to change the name of it anyways, for some reason, it's going to replace the profile. So why not just let, if we don't need to pass it normally with a name profile, a name like this, CloudFormation will just do it itself. So I know some people don't like that because they don't like the dash, blah, 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 a whole bunch of stuff, but that's what you got tags for. So let's do pod execution role ARN. And this is another to do because we got to refer to the ARN. So we're going to do im stack. Right? So there's that. Now this is where it gets a little unclear for me. So the selectors to match your pods to use this profile, where it is required. Okay. I'm noticing a theme here. Lots of to-dos. Okay, so we'll come back to that one. Subnets, the IDs of the subnets to launch your pods into. At this time, pods running on Fargate are not assigned public IP addresses, so only private subnets with no direct route to the internet gateway are accepted for this parameter. It's not required. The reason I'm hesitating there is because we've already set the subnets in our cluster, EKS cluster. But to be honest, I'm not sure if those apply to nodes or what. So see, like in this section right here, we had to provide the subnet IDs. Where is it? Okay, so this is EKS nodes. And again, we're trying to avoid the nodes. So I'm thinking we need this defined in two places. So we use the subnet IDs in the cluster if we end up with node groups. Maybe we get to a point where we mix and match. I don't know. I don't even know if that's possible or not. And then in this case, we need subnets here to identify where we want. If Fargate is taking care of the pod for us, we need to tell Fargate where to deploy these subnets or the pods for us. It did this to us the other day too, and I don't know why. Let's see, stack. For whatever reason, it doesn't like the tab. And I'm going to put both in here because we've got our VPC spread across two availability zones. So we'll do that. I guess else it will probably use the default VPC, which would be weird. Yeah, and I think the other day in this particular account, in our demo account, I'm pretty sure I nuked the default VPC, and I did that just because I was cleaning up some things in Security Hub in the demo account, and I'm like, I just want to get rid of this. I don't need it. We don't use it, so let's just clean it up, and then we'll just do the same tag structure that we've got over here. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why that weird cut and paste. Okay, and we don't want the name in here because we're going to let it do that itself. So now we are missing a bunch of parameters. So again, we can borrow from over here. Here's our tag parameters. Pull it back in. And then our stacks. Okay, so our stack parameters. So we need to figure out, I'm going to borrow again, because I can never remember these input commands, or it's not import. So this is what I want, right? And the first thing is we need the cluster name. So that's going to come from, let me call that EKS stack, not cluster stack. Okay. Yeah, just delete everything and then Security Hub is 100%. All right, so I need, in this case, the cluster name. And I don't even know what if we've even created those outputs over here. Yeah, we haven't. Okay. So let's go back and have a quick look at this. That's an easy one. So we'll just call this cluster name. The value is ref. What did we call it? EKS cluster? Yeah. What would we do without cut and paste? Dump that here, stack name, and we'll just call this cluster dash name. Go over here, cluster dash name. And what else do we have in here? You know, I like to add the ARN as well, because if there's anything else that we would ever want to get, it's probably the ARN. So we might as well just add it since we're here. And we'll just say ARN, okay? So that's the outputs there. So that takes care of this. Now we need the ARN coming from the pod execution role. There we go. So this is going to come from the IAM stack. And let's see. We just called it. See what I did? I called it an ID here, and it's an ARN. Yeah, okay. I'm kind of committed to this point, so we'll leave it, even though it's gonna trigger my naming OCDs a little bit. We'll come back to that. The subnets we can just borrow right from here because they're already defined, so we don't have to type these at all. We want them to be launched in the same private subnets, so just dump that in here. Right? VPC stack, IAM stack, EKS stack, and just to force ourselves in the habit, let's make an output right now. And what can we get from return values on the Fargate profile? A name and an ARN. So let's just do the same thing that we did before. So we'll say Fargate. You know what? I'm seeing a possible challenge here. Because remember what I said, that I'm going to put the profile in its own template so that I don't have to create this same little chunk of code. You know, let's say we end up with, I don't know, 3 or 4 profiles for whatever reason. I don't want, what do we got here? Roughly 20 lines. So I don't want 80 lines of CloudFormation template that do the same thing every time. The challenge, though, is that if we're using outputs and export names, those export names have to be unique. So we're going to have to maybe think of something that we can jam in here that makes it unique. We can pass that in from CI script. So what we're going to do is, yeah, let me lay this out, and then we'll figure that piece out. And it might not even be a big deal for right now. So we'll say ref, what do we call it? Fargate profile. Okay. And then just like I did in the other one, we'll grab the, we'll do the ARN as well. Profile, ARN. Okay. Now here's the challenge. What else could we add to this to make it unique? So what I'm thinking is we could just pass in something during the CI process and just use that as a variable, like a parameter name. So we could just do again, I don't know if this is perfect, but it would work. So we could go down here and go Fargate. I don't know if this is, I might not like this once it's deployed, but again, this is the place to make these bad choices, right? What am I trying to do? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'll show you what I'm going to try to do here. If we go over to the CI script, we'll add in our new validation, which is now going to be EKS Fargate. So, right, just do some basic validation on the template, and then we'll create a new stage. And we'll just say deploy Fargate profile. And we have to uniquely name these. So again, I'm thinking about if we have multiple Fargate profiles, then the CI stages have to be uniquely named as well. So we'll just put this in the deploy stage, variables. Actually, let's do it like this, because we'll also need unique stacks for these as well. So we'll do stack ID. We're going to go really complicated. I don't think I need the single quotes around there. And then we'll do Fargate dash profile dash stack ID EKS. I don't think it likes the fact that that is like that. Maybe it does need it. Okay, it doesn't seem to matter. Stack name, and then I need to pass in all the other stacks, right? Because we're using that import command. So it's EKS dash VPC. It's IAM stack, which is EKS dash IAM. And then I think we called it EKS stack, which is just, yeah, see what I did there? Again, don't really like some of the names I chose for this, but we're in it now. Okay, and then we'll say script. And then we don't need capabilities. This becomes what? Fargate. Stack name we're defining right there, so that's fine. Parameter overrides. We've got VPC stack. We've got IAM stack. And then we've got EKS stack. Okay. Let's see what else we've got in here. I'm going to close a couple of these down. So I just want to make sure we've passed everything in. There's EKS stack, IAM stack, VPC stack. Oh, we got to pass this in because we're going to use that down here. So we're just going to go stack ID equals. So in theory, I think we have everything. The thing we have to remember is before we get excited and try to deploy this and see if it works, we have to do the update on this one, because remember those updates or the outputs didn't exist in this stack. So we need to run that stack update first and then this one. I think we could get fancy and have some more dependencies in here to kind of lay it all out, but we haven't done that. We've just got the single deploy stage, right? Which, yeah. Okay, so let's see what we did here. Okay, perfect. Let's push those. Oh yeah, where's our to-do? Did I leave a to-do hanging off somewhere here? It is in Fargate, so let's have a quick look. Oh, selectors. Oh, I totally forgot. Selectors are required. It's a list. Okay, so that's easy. We got the list set up here. Did they give us an example of what this looks like? Namespace, my namespace, labels. Oh, okay. So I remember in the one thing, it had a namespace specifically for one of the add-ons. I want to say it was called deployment. But again, just to see this work, we can always change these later. So let's just do this. We'll just call it demo dash namespace. Okay, now do we need the labels? Let me just see here. A list of selector. And the namespace is required, labels are not. So these are Kubernetes labels that the selector should match. A pod must contain all of the labels that are specified in the selector for it to be considered a match. I think for now, we'll just see if it works with the straight namespace. We'll just leave it like that. So let's save that. Three. Where are the J's? Tied. Top of the 7th. Gotta check the scores. Unknown options, capabilities, capability IAM. That's an EKS. Oh, I'm going to pull that out of there anyways because we don't really need it right now. Must be a typo. Capabilities, capability IAM. Oh yeah, I think I spelled capabilities wrong. But we don't need that because we've commented everything out. So I wonder what it's modifying here. Oh, it's still hung up on the version change that we did, and that's because I think the the add-on deployments were failing. So it kept rolling it back, but the version stayed current, like 1.2.2. So let's execute that. I'm expecting this now to run clean because we commented out the add-ons. And this should go pretty quickly because the version update's already been done and we're just adding outputs. So perfect. Okay, that's great. And now if we check the outputs, we should have our cluster ARN and our cluster name, and we're going to use those here. So this should be adding our profile. Let's see if we get lucky and this works. Didn't fail right away. It's always good. At least we know there's not a typo. So if we go over to Kubernetes, I'm going to delete this now. We don't need this anymore. Might as well clean it out so I don't forget about it later. There's our Fargate profile being created. There's our demo workspace. That's great. Okay. I'm feeling confident. I'm hopeful that this is going to work the way that we wanted it to. Still chugging away. There's our execution role. Pod selectors, we only have the namespace, right? No labels, so that's fine. There's our tags. There we go, active. And that's created complete. Perfect. So there we go. We made some good progress tonight. I think we'll call it here. And thanks for watching. As always, appreciate it. We'll be back next Tuesday. And you can always check out the replays either here on Twitch or in our, what am I trying to say? In the YouTube channel. Okay, so check that out as well. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you later.